very special Turned Out a Punk episode. We're going to call this the We Got Power Films Special Edition because we are today talking to, from We Got Power Fanzine, and also We Got Power Films as well, Jordan Schwartz and the great director, the person that I owe in many ways for getting me into punk rock, Dave Markey, is on the show. And my gosh, this is a fun episode, and you are in for a treat. This goes all over the map. This is like, Dave Markey's films are the direct link between Black Flag and Nirvana. There is so much in this episode. I just want to talk to somebody about it. So if you listen to this episode and enjoy it, let me know because I'm excited for you to hear it. They are here though because they are promoting a incredible film about Pat Fear, aka Bill Bartell, from the band White Flag, in this unreal documentary called The Secret Lives of Bill Bartell. And before I saw it, I was like, I love White Flag. I'm a huge fan of Bill, the records Bill put out and the records Bill championed. But I'm like, why would they do a documentary about this guy? And now, having watched it, holy shit, is this guy not one of the most interesting people to kind of come out of punk rock? Yeah, like, if you're not interested in seeing this documentary by the end of this episode, I don't know what can make you. You can check out a trailer on YouTube, which would also kind of whet your appetite to watch this thing. It's got, I've been saying this to people, it's got Fat Mike and Buzz from the Melvins both agreeing that Bill Bartell was one of the most bizarrely interesting people they ever met. And those guys do not agree on anything, as you will have observed if you've listened to any of their episodes here on this podcast. I'm not going to ramble on too much more before I let you listen to this episode. If you want to get in touch with this podcast, you can have the email address turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com, and that is run by Tristan, the brother of mine and show producer and guest booker extraordinaire. And that's it. So before I let you go, check out wegotpowerfilms.com for more information about this movie. I think from what I'm seeing online now, it is available to watch on Mubi if you have access to Mubi. And it's going to be going for some screenings, and hopefully you're going to get a distribution deal real soon so you can see it for yourselves. That's it. I don't have anything more to ramble on about. Oh, except for the fact that, yes, now I have watched Reality 86. It is available online. You can find it very easily with a Google, and definitely worth your time to watch it. It's the documentary we talk about in this episode about Black Flag's last tour. But that's it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Dave Markey and Jordan Schwartz on Turned Out a Punk. Dave, Jordan, thank you both for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for having us, or great to be.
Well, it's a huge honor to have you here because I have said this many times on the show. This is what you got me into punk. Like 1991, the year punk broke, seeing that film. I grew up around punk. My dad was kind of peripherally involved in the scene in Toronto a little bit and knew some punk people. So there were some records around, but it wasn't like he was a deep head on it or anything. And I saw that film and it just like a light bulb went off over my head. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. And then my whole life has been kind of in pursuit of living in 1991, the year punk broke. And, there's moments in my life where I'm like, wow, here I am in Australia with the Foo Fighters, like, and I'm bothering Dave Grohl, like reciting dialogue from that scene in the Netherlands to him as we're like backstage, being like, "You remember this part where you did the wine shit?"
By the way, thank you. Many years ago, you did a introduction to 1991, the year punk broke. I believe it was at the Bloor Cinema.
It was, yeah. Which
and
go on, sorry.
Yeah, I had been there originally on the theatrical run back in 92 or 3, and I was in the Bloor for a screening of that film. But yours was a few years later, and I only know because someone sent me a YouTube link going, this guy's he's talking about you and your film, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
It
And then
was
I saw your band play at was it Fuck Yeah Fest or
Yeah.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
yeah.
yeah?
So
Then I saw you guys play, and I'm like, okay,
yeah, you clued me into it.
this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Well, and Jordan, you and me have hung out in person a couple times.
Yep.
But
At Punk Rock Bowling.
but I had no idea that you curated one of the greatest punk rock compilations of all time. I never made the connection.
Dave and I did. We
I
collabed.
sequenced that record, and you're talking about 1982's, or was it 83? We Got Power, Party or Go Home.
83 it came out.
Yeah, 83. And we were working on it since 82. So originally it was going to be a 7-inch. We were trying to get, 20 bands on a 7-inch. And then it just expanded to 40 bands on a 12-inch. And we worked on that throughout 82. And then it finally came out in 83.
It is, to me, a compilation that just gets discussed on this podcast quite a bit over the years, because it's like an incredible reflection of kind of how rich hardcore was at that period across America. And there's a lot of bands that make their only vinyl appearance on that compilation that wind up becoming hugely significant. Pre Pearl Jam, Jeff Ament, Direct Diction, of course, and it's an incredible compilation. El Duce's first solo appearance, I believe, as well. So there's highs and lows. White Cross.
Direct Diction was the band. Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam appears on that record, and it's like 10 years before, or grunge. We were already forging the future, unbeknownst to us at the time, of course. But I don't know. I saw a direct correlation between hardcore and grunge that happened years later. So it makes sense.
But to get into that record for a sec, because the concept was, in hardcore, one of the, I guess, attributes of hardcore is the short song. And we Dave and I and my sister Jennifer and Kim Pelkin, we had founded a fanzine, and we thought, well, hey, let's do a compilation to promote the fanzine, but have it all like 1-minute songs.
1 minute or under.
Right. Well, although some of them run a little over. But
Bogarts.
And then of course, and to me the two big inspirations were the Minutemen, because at the time they were pretty much doing all 1-minute songs, and then also the Authorities' I Hate Cops, which I had heard on the Maximum Rock and Roll radio show, which used to get broadcast on a station, KPFK, which actually is still going here. But anyway, so, we the goal was, hey, let's do a compilation of all 1-minute songs. And fortunately, started as a 7-inch. We were able to use the We Got Power fanzine network to collect tapes from all the different bands, and finally got it together and got it promoted up to a 12-inch. It's amazing. And it was so deep that there was so much music on there that they couldn't do the little spacing on the vinyl in between the songs. So DJs pretty much either had to play the first songs or just do a needle drop somewhere in the middle to try and play some stuff on their college radio station, a hardcore show.
I Hate Cops might be one of the all-time great side one, track one.
I also like the Dig Little Abortions tune. Shout out to you, Canadian hardcores. The Diglos were that's a great that record that track comes from is amazing. That recording is great. There's a few.
Didn't the Dayglows the first time they came to the U.S. Didn't they camp out in front of your mom's condo, dude, Jordan?
No, that was JFA. So
no, this was also the Dayglows. Fucking
no,
Jesus Bonehead. I remember it. You don't. I do.
Yeah. No, what I remember is their van broke down in San Francisco. I was so bummed I didn't get to see them. And also Also, I got in the van with Dave's band, Sin 34, to go out to a gig in Phoenix, and Sin 34 was going to play with the Putrid Girls, but Kim Pelkington crashed her car in uh, Chiriaco Summit or someplace like that. It's just near the California-Arizona border. So I had to stay with her to bring the car back. So I got to miss the Putrid Girls as well. We were also on that compilation.
Yeah. What about like the fuck ups who are on that compilation? Like, had you guys seen them?
Yeah. They came down. They played like T-Bird Roller Drome or something like that, and they're just in the middle of the bill. I'm like, wow, these guys are awesome. And so I think maybe they had it with them, but I scored that FU 82 single. Yeah, it's cool. It was really cool. Oh, and the girls singing backups were the Fuckettes. So yeah, I didn't catch them. I didn't catch them up in San Francisco, but yeah, they played down here.
They used to have like beef with LA, right? Like there was like the story about 45 Grave playing a show and one of the members tackling the singer off the stage and like really hurting her.
I don't
Yeah,
know. They were kind of a problematic band, in my opinion. I think I think there was another couple bands on on that record that I don't know has some pretty nasty homophobic lyrics
yeah. Well, Damian said El
that
Duce. There's problematic all there. He just
well, I mean,
couldn't a word.
El Duce was almost had free reign, but I'm talking about what was it, Urban Assault SF, and then Crankshaft. They had some pretty nasty lyrics in there that are regrettable.
Yeah, there's definitely obviously songs that I think certainly don't age very well, but then at the same time there's also the big boys on there as well. I mean
Yeah,
there's like a
Red Cross, the Minutemen, JFA, Sin 34.
Adrenaline
Yeah,
OD,
most
yeah.
Yeah.
most of that stuff is pretty much happy-go-lucky kind of stuff. But I think overall, some of the old hardcore doesn't age so well.
What about Manimals?
Yeah, I don't remember the.
There's some weird stuff on there too that's not really necessarily hardcore, like the Romulans, which it's almost like a dub track or something. We push the boundaries. I mean, for a hardcore record, it's pretty arty and pretty varied, and has bands that kind of transcended the genre. But the thrust of it was definitely inspired by the stuff that was going on, in the early '80s, and the stuff that we kind of founded the fanzine around. So
I think it's amazing though that Manimals is on there because their 12-inch that came out, Blood is the Harvest, is considered one of the worst records of all time. It came out a few years later, and it's
yeah, I'm
like,
not even sure who that band was. What's the track? Was that the one that kind of sounded Misfits-esque,
yeah,
maybe?
yeah, they were like,
That one. Oh
yes,
yeah. Yeah, where'd they come from, Jordan? I don't even know.
I don't even
Some
remember.
some of it just appeared out of thin air,
Yeah,
and then
it showed up in the mail. We had ads in the fanzine, and we did. I did some directed mailings and stuff like that. I also recorded 4 tracks with Felix Atlantis from Smoke 7 that hooked me up with a studio in Simi Valley. And I think we brought in 4 bands, including the Sin 34-bit, JFA, and 2 others. So there's just a smatter from all over the place, which why that record is so cool.
so how,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're saying, it's like arty. It's like that's the thing about it. It's like it reflects that hardcore. I think as hardcore goes on, it gets reduced a little bit sonically and becomes like kind of very much one note. But at the beginning, it's like it's so cool how much weird stuff is happening within the parameters of what's being called hardcore.
Well,
And
that was really what was going on in LA too, because hardcore bands often played with all sorts of bands. Like so much of this music was lumped together. We had like goth bands playing with hardcore bands, and there was no real rules at the time in LA in the early '80s. So it was just like uh, I think that influenced our approach to to the whole thing, and our scene and our zine and all that. So it was never just one thing, and it was not just boys fun. I mean, my band, we had a female front singer, and I think we were one of the first bands that you could call a hardcore band that had a girl singer, and so early on, I mean, everything we were doing was kind of like really not typical of what it was. So, and we carried through with that. We went to extremes with that, as we moved on. But
You guys also self-released your records as opposed to going on a label. Was that like a conscious choice to try and
Sin
self-release them?
34 did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just maybe we tried getting the demo tape out to labels and there was no interest, and we just said, fuck it, we'll do it ourselves. And Phil Newman, who is no longer with us, the bass player, who I lived with for many years and helped build a recording studio with, and started another band with after Sin 34 broke up, and that was Painted Willie, and that band got out of LA. Sin 34 didn't really get out of LA. It was really sort of a Southern California thing. I mean, we did trips up to San Francisco and Central California, and then we did trips out to like Phoenix and Tucson. But that was as far as Sin 34 went. But Painted Willie toured the continental U.S. a number of times. So that band got out. And but yeah, Phil Newman, and he was the one behind the label, and eventually the studio, which was named Spinhead after the label. And that went on all the way through the late '80s. And
How did the relationship with Doug Moody come about in Mystic?
Who?
Doug Moody, the
Dog Booty? I never heard of him.
the infamous recording on the Led Zeppelin board, documenting every punk band ever. Doug
that
Moody.
was what he said. I don't know. I mean, that guy, I'd rather not give him any airtime, personally. He was.
Yeah, we have so much. We have so much better stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he took that record and put it out, and never paid any of the bands, never paid us, and then that record sort of established his label, and all of a sudden he's putting out hardcore records. So it's kind of shitty the way that all worked out. And
yeah, and the one, I think one thing we do need to clarify, We Got Power Party to Go Home was the thing. We brought them a box of various tapes, quarter-inch masters and whatnot. They edited it, and they did get the record out. So I thank Philip Raves, and that crew at the time. We did whatever. I had some fun there. But Doug went on to do, or they went on to do these other compilations that were somewhat related, have some of the words of our title in there, but
they just took our name,
nothing to do with it. Yeah.
They took our name and ran with it without our permission. And
yeah,
I mean, everything about it was just shitty.
And Party or Go Home was not recorded at Mystic. The other ones were recorded at Mystic, and you can listen and hear the difference.
Yeah, and
that's that.
So the second one you guys had nothing to do with?
The second and third one, absolutely nothing to do.
It's crazy.
And,
well,
he took the name and just
ran with it.
Ran with it.
He tweaked the name. Yeah.
Yeah, we got Party or whatever, and it's just something again that was just very regrettable. And
yeah, I have a very minor contribution on the second one. I sing backups on the SWA 99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Yeah, because I know you're on that compilation as like
just a little bit, just backups, but we had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Or the third one, and then he does a thing and he slags us on, Let's move on.
Let's
So
move
much
on.
better stuff
Yes.
to talk about. Like Dave's new documentary, The Secret Lives of Bill Bartell.
Oh, we'll get there.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that the documentary, well, I guess we can jump right into that. Like it's one of those movies that I came out of it being like, there's so many more questions. Like there's obviously questions and stories that you get from this, but then by the end of it, you're like, wow, like who is this guy? Like I thought I knew all the interesting characters in Punk, and I guess Bill is someone that no one really knew well enough to understand how fascinating he was till this movie.
He had many sides to him, and he had many identities and things that he did in his life, and you know, really fascinating character. And even his closest friends, like I knew him for 30 years, and I still felt like I didn't really know him. And I think, all of his close friends would say the same thing. I mean, I think in the last year of his life, when he had fallen ill and he knew that he wasn't long for this world, at that point, he shifted and actually came clean and told me who he was after years of, you know, wearing all these hats and guises and masks. And, but I mean, the guy did a lot of amazing things. I mean, it's just, it's mind blowing and really complex. And, when I set out to make this film, I was just like, this is going to be quite a task to tell this story because, what a multifaceted uh, life he lived. And so I tried to get to, most of what I knew or I learned in the process of doing the interviews with the various. I think we have 40 plus interviews in the film, and every time we did an interview, we walk away going like, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, and that just kept going on, and then until I just built up 75 hours of material that I had to work with and edit, and I did that pretty much most of last year. Starting in you know February, we cut a trailer, we cut a teaser trailer, and we've been shooting it for 3 years at that point. And myself and Brian Kehoe, we weren't really quite sure what we had until we actually went through the process of reviewing everything, taking notes, and I put together the concept of this teaser trailer. We put it online, and there was a great response to it, and that sort of energized us to kick higher gear into the project. And a few months later, I was starting the process of editing the film, and that went on for about 9 months. And for me, this is a very different film because it's about a person. It's also a very personal film. So, it was a lot going on, and
and you spent a lot of time on it.
I really relished the challenge of it. I mean, it was challenging to me, and I really got off on that. I was like, okay, I'm going to just take this and go, and just so I did 10-hour days, 6 days a week for 9 months, and I cut the film together in my living room, and there we have the film. We premiered a few weeks ago here in LA at the Slam Dance Film Festival, their first festival in Los Angeles. They moved here this year, and we got in, found out about that towards the end of last year. So definitely had to do all the finishing work on the film. Had to do all the sound mix and the coloring work and bringing it all together. And didn't have a lot of time to do that, so got it in just right under the wire, and we were on the screens here in LA, and it was thrilling. The first time I showed it to an audience was at this festival, and you never know what you've done until you actually sit and watch it with an audience. Uh, it was quite an experience for me personally.
I would imagine that would be an incredible Q&A afterwards, as all these stories about him are coming out from people that had just watched the screening that, yeah, probably had weird, wild interactions with this guy. Because it seems like every single person that ran into him had a weird, interesting interaction with him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, for example, I had to uh, try to get festival clearances for a lot of the things that we see in the film. We see footage from Penelope Spheeris's Decline of Western Civilization. So I had to reach out to her and ask her if it was okay to use this footage. And she was like, yeah, I knew Bill. He was a fucking asshole. And she told me the story that Bill had a meeting with her set up around the time of right after the release of the film of The Decline. And he came to her office, and she was wondering, what's this about? What does this guy want to meet with me about? And she said he proceeded to berate her for an hour to her face, telling her how much her film sucked and how much she sucked to her face. Like who does that? Like, I guess people do that on the internet all the time, but it's safe. You could talk trash and hide behind your screen. Bill did not do that. And I was just like, Penelope, yours is not the first story that I've heard. A lot of people had unfortunate run-ins with him over the years. Jello Biafra, Beck.
What was the
I mean,
Beck one?
he kind of famously just trashed people to their face, or
if he didn't like them,
or put out records, or maybe he did like them. Maybe he was just testing them. Who knows? But with Bill, it was just like, I don't know how many situations I've been in with the guy where I'm just like biting my tongue. He had this just sense of dominance. He would walk into a room and he would just take over. And if there were people around, if there were rock stars around, if there were movie stars around, if there was anyone famous around, he just would, go off. And it wasn't always pretty. And he really spoke his mind. In the situation with Beck, it was at a Beastie Boys party. They had a store in LA for a while called X Large. I think it was their opening party or one of their early parties they had at the store. And I had went there that night with Kim Gordon and Thurston Moore, and we were hanging out. And, we met, Mike D. We're all hanging out. And Beck shows up, and everyone's like whispering in our ears, Beck's tripping right now. And Bill heard this. So Bill approaches Beck and says, this was actually before Beck even had his album out. I think the Loser single had been released on an independent label in Los Angeles. And Bill just kind of trashed into his face saying, like, I don't like you, you may think you're hot shit now. And poor Beck. Beck is, first of all, on psychedelics and probably very sensitive. And I know that it really kind of upset him, but I mean, it upset me. It was just,
he's getting dressed down by the founder of Gasatanka Records.
As it turns out, Beck did pretty well for himself, and he persevered and went on to have quite an amazing body of work. He wasn't just a one-hit wonder. But I think Bill was just really cynical of what, the music industry was, the star machine was. I think he was just, and I think in a lot of cases when he was being mean to people, he put out a record called Jail Jello around the time of Jello Biafra's controversy with the PMRC. And people were like, doing benefits for him, his legal defense. And Bill's response was to put out a record with the Necros called Jail Jello, which really, the record itself had nothing to do with that. It was just a split compilation with the Necros. But, Bill, ever the one going for the controversy, just would do shit like that. And, I mean, for me, I had known Bill for a number of years, just playing shows with him. He actually picked up the slack for us and put out the soundtrack album to Desperate Teenage Love Dolls. And so, like, before long, I was, working with him on these projects, but like, I still knew that he was just a loose cannon, kind of a live wire.
But a very effective loose cannon.
You never knew what you were going to get. And, but there was still something about him. Like, anyone else would have gotten punched in the face. Bill was just so audacious. I don't know why he got away with it, but he just was sort of like, I try to equate him to people can understand his personality. I mean, he was somewhere between Andy Kaufman and Forrest Gump. I mean,
and Randy from the Village People.
Whether or not he was on the spectrum, who knows? He was just on a different level altogether. But I think a lot of times what he was doing, even when he was being mean, was I think he was testing people. I think he's like, okay, everybody's kissing your ass because you're the hot shit right now. I'm going to go the other direction. I think it was a tactic. I think it was something that he was doing on purpose to see if he could actually end up endearing himself by being an asshole. So, but I mean, every interview we did, a lot of his close friends said there was just periods of times where we would just not be speaking, where Bill had just done so much. It was just like, okay, I'm never speaking to you again. But then that would only last a short period of time because Bill just had this way of coming back and reattaching himself. Just really like, I don't know, not like anyone I've ever known. And a lot of people say that in the film about him, but it's really true. And the thing is that, while he was this way, he also, at the same time, had this other side to him that was just, I don't know, you felt like, I don't know, he was this lovable guy in spite of being all that at the same time. So he was walking contradiction. And when he passed away, I was just surprised for me just how it affected me, how deeply his passing affected me. So sorry to ramble.
No, because I think you brought up autism there, and obviously I didn't know him at all, but I think that's one thing that really came across to me watching the film is that there was mental health struggles that were going on, like Kim's from the Fastback story about him calling all night incessantly.
He did that to everybody. He called people in the middle of the night, like, let's, it's time to talk. He did things that would really, it's amazing that everyone loved him so much, considering the type of person he could be.
Well, he's very, obviously highly motivated too. Like, it's the type of person that in a different situation, given a different set of sort of family circumstances, might be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company because he is doing this label. He's able to talk himself into every room he wants to get into. Plus, he's also at some, later in life, seemingly becomes a cop.
Right.
Which is terrifying too, and I think that's the part where I went back and I rewatched one of my favorite short films of all time, which is the Stephen McDonald stolen base film that you did, and
Yeah.
his part in that, given where he's going to be in a few years, where he becomes a cop, it's like, wow, this is like he's lovable. He's also terrifying in a certain
He
way
had a
too.
lifelong obsession with law enforcement that was driven by this fetishistic mindset of his that I think, you know, he was really drawn to it on that level. And but at the same time, obviously he carried it further and went beyond. I mean, he used these kind of Tom of Finland-esque homoerotic uh, imagery of cops with, big bulges and very just very sort of leather S&M kind of imagery, you know, and he was putting it on white flag flyers and records and T-shirts. There's a scene in the film where Marty talks about Bill showing up with this white flag shirt with this black cop with a big 14-inch dick hanging out. And Marty's just like, hey, what's up with this shirt? And Bill, of course, just deflects it like, oh, it's a joke. But really, what was behind it was Bill's obsessive uh, fetishization of it all. And, I think it was something that just got him off. But obviously, it carried over to a much more serious level when he actually decided to go to the police academy and he actually decided to become a cop.
And he
Yeah,
was a
I mean,
teacher.
well, yeah, he was a substitute teacher earlier on, and I think he didn't last in anything that he did professionally very long. I don't think he wasn't even a cop for that long, really. His career was very short. Uh, as a police officer for the Banning Police Department here in the Inland Empire in Southern California. So yeah, I mean, Bill came from this rural place that's 70 miles outside of Los Angeles. So he grew up in this really kind of redneck backwoods, could be anywhere in middle America type of place. And but I mean, he spent more time in Hollywood. And it was just like all of his friends would just go, Bill, why don't you move here? You're here every night of the week, seeing all these bands and doing all this stuff. Why don't you just move here? But Bill was always driving back at the end of the night, going back to, well, it used to be called Sunnymead, and then it just got incorporated into Moreno Valley. The small town of Sunnymead, where he was born and raised, eventually went away. It was such a tiny town that it eventually evaporated off the map. But it's a really interesting guy that came from an environment like that, but was just completely perverse in a way, unlike people that I knew that grew up on the streets of Hollywood here. So, he definitely had a lot going on.
yeah. Like, do you think it was maybe the conservative situation that he's kind of coming out of? Because it seems like to inform, like he's informed by, obviously, like you're saying, this sort of fetish driven life, right down to the bull riding later on. Like, I don't want to spoil too much of this movie because the movie's incredible. Like, I feel like I don't think I'm spoiling it by saying that, but like, I feel like, um, but there's also this other side of him that, like you're saying, there's like this deep conservative, like where he's talking about anarchy, and it's you're like, wow, you really fucking hated the idea of anarchy being part of this thing.
Early on, when I first met Bill, it was at a show at Ruthie's Inn in Berkeley, and my band Sin 34 was playing with his band White Flag, and we were both opening up for GBH, and we were staying at Tim Yohannon's house. And Bill, meanwhile, is calling Tim Yohannon and Jeff Bale commies, like, and just being like, and I thought Bill was just this big right winger. Like, I'm just like, okay, he's just, but I mean, in actuality, he wasn't. But I mean, I think maybe he grew up in that environment and it rubbed off on him in a way, but he was just using it to, I think, as a way to, again, be provocative and fuck with people. I mean, I know years later, as America went down this path towards right wing and fascism, the fascist state that we're living in here now, I know Bill would be completely opposed to it, and I know that
Yep.
he spent, like, when he was seeing the rise of Sarah Palin and all that, he would just rail against her on his Facebook page all the time. So it was like, he was just a big old left winger like me at heart. But still, I think early on, I don't know if he really was. I think what Bill was trying to do was just get a rise out of people,
Yep.
no matter who it was. Timmy O'Hannon, Jello Biafra, Beck. Um, you know, I'm just going to get a rise out of them. I mean, there's this funny story too. Like he would do it to rock and roll people too. Like what's the singer of Journey? Fucking what's that dude's name? Steve Perry. Like he once approached Steve Perry in line at a pizza joint here and just said, "You're responsible for the worst night of my life. I hate you and I hate your band." And Steve Perry just turns to Bill and goes, "Fuck you." Like, I mean, this is just what Bill did. It's like he had no filters, and he wasn't the biggest guy at all. He was 6'2". He was about 5'7", 8". He wasn't, the guy could not have won in any fight at all. But again, for some reason, he never got punched out. I don't know why. Anyone else, yeah. But again, I think it's just his audaciousness, and I think he had the ability of just catching people off guard.
And he looked like a cop, right? So you're like, I'm not going to punch this guy. He's probably a fucking cop.
He always had that. He had that mustache cop look going pretty much through the '80s, into the '90s and beyond. And then, of course, at a certain point, the mustache just got bigger and wilder. And as he began his forays into bull riding and country and western music.
Yeah, like it's just. I'm sure you could probably make a second film just with stuff that you cut out of this movie. Like all
I
the
have
stories.
enough material to make a miniseries, and at one point, I was wondering if I was going to do that, but I figured I'm just going to make this film, and this was a film that I wanted to make 30 years ago while Bill was alive, and I even had the title for it then. But of course, Bill was not into it, not cooperating. Was certainly not ready to have his secrets revealed and his layers revealed and his story told. But it's something that I just picked up many years later, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, the stuff with the germs is so fascinating. Like I find that germs inner circle stuff
Right.
really interesting. Like the people that kind of existed around that band and sort of like it feels like LA had a lot of sort of little cults that would exist around
Sure.
bands.
Coming in on the first wave of LA punk, being inside the Germs inner circle. I mean, to me, that was always like one of the more like amazing things about Bill because I never got to see the band in their prime. We were a little younger. Like we were down in Santa Monica. None of us drove yet. We didn't realize we could get on a bus and go into Hollywood. But I remember we almost went to that Germs reunion show uh, that night, December 3rd, 1980, the last time the Germs played. And it was raining, and we didn't want to take the bus in the rain. So missed the Germs. I thought there'd be more shows, but of course, a few days later, Darby and John Lennon would both be dead, and that would be the end of that. But I mean, interestingly enough, I mean, I think Bill loved the Germs as much as he loved the Beatles, and I mean, again, just the different levels of which he operated on. equal love for Iron Maiden and Darby Crash and, Rudy Shankar and, Pat Smear, and then calling himself Pat Fear and naming everyone in his band after, Jello Biafro or, like some sort of reference to, White Flag, Black Flag, like just. And the thing is, Bill loved Black Flag. It wasn't like, of course it was a parody of it, but I mean, he loved the band. He seriously loved the band. And yeah,
He drove him
again,
crazy.
yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe a bit of a stalker thing going on there. He stalked Kiss for years. I mean, both Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley knew who he was. And uh, one of the people in the film, Rebecca Severin of Frightwig, ended up working for Kiss as a costumer. And Bill was siding up to her, trying to get access to backstage. And, Rebecca was told that he's persona non grata. He is not welcome back here. You can't.
Negative guest list.
They put out, the band put out printed photos of him and gave it to their crew saying, if you see this guy backstage, get him out. But Bill had been sneaking in backstage to Kiss shows for years and showing up at all of their press conferences and just being this annoying gnat. But it was because he loved them that he did that. So
one of my favorite moments in the movie is when he's backstage with the Melvins at the Kiss show, and it's just like, holy, like all my most anxious, intrusive thoughts are playing out at once on the screen there with him. And like I feel like I am a Punisher's Punisher, but he takes punishing to a master level. Like, it's truly, I was in awe.
Yeah, and again, at the same time, there's no one that loved Kiss more than him, as he tortured them, as he stalked them, as he showed up at their press conferences, asking ridiculous questions, in front of media and just derailing the whole thing and getting off on it. And I mean, who does that?
I tell you, it is now my life's work to get Drew Barrymore to come on this podcast just to ask her for Bill Bartell stories.
We almost had her in the film. We were.
Well, she is in the film, kind of.
Well, she's in the film. We see her in archival footage, but she actually agreed to doing an interview, and we were actually in conversation with her, people going back and forth. But she's in New York City doing her daily talk show, and there was a point in time where I was close with her as well, and as a part of that whole circle with Eric Erlinson and Bill, and in the mid '90s there, and we all hung out and went on trips to Vegas together, and we see bits and pieces of my video footage of that in the film, but that's how that footage originated, just from hanging out and me with my camera doing what I do. But she and Pat Smear both agreed to be in the film, but their schedules just didn't permit the interview. And
what about anyone that was like a cop when he was a cop? Like,
well, we did have one guy that we met on Facebook, and he was Bill's sergeant. And originally he agreed to do an interview, and then he backed out. I made the mistake of friending him on Facebook. And then he started posting on my wall because he saw the stuff that I was posting. And he started posting all this extreme right-wing, anti-abortion, pro-Trump stuff. And it didn't last. It just fell apart. But before he did that, it was just like he had already backed out of doing an interview, because there's just people that work in law enforcement. There's a secret code. They are not going to go on record talking about a fellow officer under any situation, right? And this guy was retired, and he still, you know, wouldn't do it because there's just this code amongst cops that they're not talking about another officer, in a public record, public forum, interview in a documentary film, podcast, telephone conversation, whatever. They're not going to participate. So, unfortunately, we weren't able to get that, and I was hoping we could. And just a memo to other filmmakers out there: don't personally friend these people on your social media. That was a mistake.
Yeah, but I guess that's also like insight to this other side that he was able to kind of hold, where he's interacting with these people on a professional level that, like you're saying,
Right.
don't hold the same values of him as him, but
No.
he's able to kind of
And
be there with them.
right. I mean, Bill, I think Don Bowles says it in the film, or Jennifer Schwartz says it in the film, that Bill could infiltrate anywhere, anything, any situation. He started doing it at an early age. He's faking Iron Maiden backstage laminates. He's showing up friending Steve Harris of Iron Maiden. He's in conversation with him casually. Bill's like, "You guys need to put out a live record." And Steve Harris says, "Oh, we recorded some tracks in Japan last week." And Bill's like, "Put it out. Call it Maiden Japan." Made in Japan? No, Bill is made in Japan. And Steve Harris is just like, "You're a genius." And this is a 16-year-old Bill Bartell who faked a backstage laminate and got backstage and befriended, you know, his heroes in all of these bands. And that didn't stop with Bill. Bill had the ability to side up to anybody and, either torture them or befriend them and name their records. And not only that, Steve Harris took one look at this outfit that Bill was wearing, this black and white tailored outfit, that's something that Bill's mother had made for him. And he really liked it. And Bill's like, "You want it? Here it is." And Steve Harris wears this Bill Bartell's outfit in the Iron Maiden video to run to the hills. Steve Harris is wearing Bill Bartell's outfit.
That's awesome. And but that's also, I think that's the thing about this genre, right? Like you can show up in this genre and you can kind of just make your own rules, and that's what he did. And um, I think that's like one of the great things that you celebrate in that movie is that there's a guy who just like never let anyone make the rules for him. He's just constantly throwing out that book.
And there is a tragic, painful side to all of it as well, right? His
Well,
life.
yeah, you can only keep that going for so long. And there was a dark side there that was quite apparent. And,
When
I mean, self-destructive. Stephen McDonald says it very well in the film that, like, becoming a cop and then becoming a rodeo bull rider, like these are self-destructive moves. Like, he's doing this in his mid 40s. He's not in shape. He's not in good health to begin with. And then, you know, I feel like if I go further, I'll spoil some things in the film. But I mean, let's just say the bull riding didn't end well with him, and it attributed to his decline in health, and also his diet, what he ate. He was a vegetarian, but he just ate junk food. He just ate, McDonald's burgers without the meat and French fries and a super large size Diet Coke. He drank gallons of Diet Coke on a
A
daily
day.
basis. And that went on for decades, right? And eventually he gives himself diabetes. And, his sister, who appears in the film, says, diabetes did not run in the family. This wasn't a Bill had himself diabetes from his kind of atrocious junk food diet. So, you know, these are all factors that played into his demise.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty self-conscious. I think he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, like there's definitely like a tragedy, kind of like a sinister tragedy running throughout his whole life
I mean, he
too.
was so smart, you know. I mean, he was a child genius, right? I mean, and I don't know, a lot of friends that we've been close to that have been on that level of smarts. They just have a difficult time. It's like the smarter you are, the harder it is to live. Um, maybe a
Well,
bit of that.
and he was hiding. He was hiding some of his secrets from people, so he
Well,
couldn't
yeah,
connect with people.
it was all about
So
secrets and I mean, I think there was also a control factor going on there. I think he really got off on the fact that he could be so many different people to so many different people. And just really, I mean, just it's why I wanted to make the film in the first place in 1994. And it's why I made the film 30 years later. Um,
Yeah, because it definitely, I think that's the he only got more intriguing. I imagine since '94 in those intervening years because he definitely I don't know, it just feels like he right until the where his life goes, like I think he's kind of on this path that you kind of wonder if he even knew who he was at a certain point.
right,
And there's
sure.
and that's a it's like a wrestler in a way where you can kind of lose yourself in the gimmick. There's wrestlers that say that like, oh, the guy got lost in his gimmick, where you start becoming more your character than who you really are. And I don't know, I feel like in punk we can kind of have these personas too. Like you brought up El
Sure.
Duce, and El Duce I feel like is someone who maybe it wasn't a persona depending on who you talk to about him. And there's other people where it is more of a persona that they kind of get caught up in, and I feel like that's definitely with Bill. There's a lot of personas going on.
Yeah. I mean, El Duce, you run into him during the day when he was sober, and he was a completely different person. He was a really nice guy. He wasn't that guy. So I remember having that experience with him early on and being very confused. It's like, you know, show business,
Yeah,
punk rock personas, characters. I mean, Bill, in a sense, was sort of really like a performance artist, and there was no stage too small for him. And he would do things like when he was a cop, for him, it was a lot of fun to pull over kids with punk rock stickers on their cars and fuck with the kids. Like he saw these goth girls with a Christian Death bumper sticker, and he pulls up behind them in his car, puts the siren on, gets out of his car, walks up, asks for the license and registration, and two nervous goth girls are front seat, passenger seat, and Bill's like, "What is this Christian Death? Do you want to kill Christians?" And they're like, "Oh no, officer, it's just a band. It's a band that we like." And then Bill just turned to them and said, "I know. I played with them 25 years ago with the Cafe de Grand," and then handed them a white flag sticker and said, "Be on your way and be on your way." Like this is what Bill. This is the kind of stuff that Bill did, and so many stories like this that we couldn't even get into the film because they take too long to tell, and there's so many of them. But what I mean is that there was no stage too small for him. He will do a performance for two people like that in a car, and in this case, probably blew those two young girls' minds. They're probably still thinking about it and talking about it to this day.
it,
And by the way, Ray, you've lost a few stories with the passing of Howie Pyro, right?
yeah,
That was
Howie Pyro passed during the making of this film, as did Bill's brother. These were people that we were going to interview for the film, and of course, losing Howie was just really tragic. Howie was exceptionally close to Bill, and like me and maybe a couple other people, Jim Laspiza, that actually knew Bill on a deeper level, beneath all of that, beneath the surface and the characters and the masks, actually really knew who the real Bill was. And then when Howie passed, it was just like, well, there went all those stories. There went all of those mysteries, poof, into thin air, just like life.
Because Howie might have been connected with Bill on the most levels as anybody else, almost like
Absolutely.
a super user.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, and Howie Pyro is someone that deserves a documentary film made about him as well.
mm-hmm. For
Amazing,
sure.
amazing story there, and great
He's
guy.
his picture's on a Crass record. I mean, for Christ's sakes.
We could go on talking about his connections to punk from, being with Sid Vicious, the night Nasty Sponge had died, on down to the line. I mean, it's just. Besides that, I mean, Howie Pyro was just a dear friend and really great that so glad that I knew him and got to know him, and so gracious that he was a part of my life and a part of Bill's life, and it was just really horrifying that he passed and we were unable to get him in the film.
That's why I think these movies are so important, because these stories, so much of punk is just oral history, and through these oral legends that are passed around, and if they're not recorded in some way, if you don't give life to them in some way, they're going to be forgotten and gone forever. And so, not to be selfish about it, but I think as just in terms of having an historical record of people's lives and their journeys, I think it's important to have that stuff out there. And yeah, rest in peace.
Bill put a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of artifacts of Bartell in the world through dozens of White Flag records. I mean, he kept that band going for as long as he did. That band went on for 30 years. So many different lineups of the band, and
they have a record on Lost and Found out of Germany, the most infamous bootleg label of all time. But they have an official 7-inch, and I have a test press of it over there. It's incredible, the run of records that he put out,
and the stuff that he did with Tater Tots as well. And I mean, so much stuff is out there in the world that Bill produced. Some of it very small runs, some of it very exclusive to whatever country that he managed to get a deal with. I mean, he was famous for booking these tours of these remote places, Assat, Greenland, the Faroe Islands, going where no band would go before. I mean, he had White Flag over in Europe before Black Flag got over there in the early 80s. I mean, Bill had the ability to do these things, and we're still not quite sure how he did them.
Yeah,
this is why there's a movie about him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's the big question, is like, what did he do in those early years? I feel like that's
a lot of head scratching.
A lot of head scratching, yeah, and also one of the most sought after records in my world, that White Flag Red Cross split, also on the infamous Mystic Records. I guess before the actual soundtrack came out.
That was going to be a picture disc, and there were, I think, 100 of those pressed, and yeah, very, very incredibly rare. And
yeah, we don't even have one.
Right? Both of the I have a copy.
Oh yeah, I don't have one.
You don't have one?
I don't think so.
You didn't take care of your vinyl the way I took care of vinyl.
Jordan, yes, I wasn't the archivist. No, I listened to it. Scratch. Yeah, all my records are scratched.
Your records were on the ground, dude, walking on them. So me, I took care of my records and still have most of them. But at any rate, trying to unpack Bill Bartell in one movie or in one interview, it's a tough gig.
It must have been tough being in LA and having the McDonald brothers and Bill running wild pulling pranks, prank phone calls, just being eccentric beyond people's wildest imaginations.
That was just normal everyday life for a really long time.
And of those kind of trolling things, I mean, tater tots, Beatlemania is the ultimate troll.
Yes.
Beetlefest.
Or
Yeah.
Beetlefest
Uh,
is the ultimate troll. I mean, that's like 10,000 crank calls all rolled into one.
yes. Yeah, that part's incredible. Like, there's just so many parts. We could just talk. I don't want to spoil the movie, as I say, because we could just talk scene for scene about different stuff. But that Tater Tots footage, and Pat Smear wasn't Tater Tots too, right? At a point.
Yeah, he wasn't a part of that performance, but he was on one or two of the records.
Yeah, I know on one of the 7 inches certainly.
Yeah, there was a 7 inch, but he's also, I think, on the first album, maybe the second album. I don't know. There's so much stuff; it's just hard to even keep track of it all. But yeah, there was a 7 inch that he did, Bohemian Rhapsody mixed with Yoko Ono's. Have you ever seen The Wind? That's actually really quite amazing. 7 inch.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I think I feel like there's just so much pranks going on. Like when Stephen McDonald was on the podcast, he talked about, the first time he was on the podcast, talked about how they used to prank call the McDonald's where Courtney Love worked, and just all throughout her shift on the phone, and then she would do emergency breakthroughs on the other line on their phone and just prank call them back. So it feels like, yeah, it feels like that's kind of the energy. Like Bill obviously is an extreme case of it, but it just feels like there's sort of this mischievous whimsy thing that's going on through a lot of this stuff in LA at that time.
It was just play. It was play, and again, just fucking with people for fun.
Yeah, well, and we got into a little bit of that too. Crank calling Pat Smear when he worked at the SST Superstore on the Sunset Strip.
What would you say to him?
Oh, asking, do you have the paper bag box set? I would be interested in purchasing that.
Again, well, it's just.
What do you think the single biggest day of sales would have been at the SST record store?
I don't know. No clue.
Not much.
Think about this a lot.
Not much. Yeah. And, that wasn't a cheap rental space either.
No.
That inspired Thurston Moore and myself to write a song that appears on the Sonic Youth Experimental Jet Set Trash and No Star album called Screaming Skull. And we wrote that song one day after a trip up there, because I lived pretty close to the Sunset Strip, and Thurston spent a lot of time in LA, and we went up there and hung out while Pat was working. And this was like just a moments before Pat gets a phone call at the SSC Superstore from Kurt Cobain going, "Hey, do you want to come down and jam with us? We're looking for a second guitarist." And then,
which is not a prank call.
Well, yeah, you would think, right? And then, that phone conversation happened at the SST Superstore. Kurt called Pat while he was working there on a shift. So Pat goes from making minimum wage, what was that at the time, $2.75 an hour, to joining Nirvana on the In Utero tour.
Well, and that also is the second call Pat got there about joining a band, right? Because he also famously got called by Flea.
That's true.
To join the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That's true. And he turned Flea down. And I think that's the story that Kurt heard. And Kurt's like, I want him in my band. Like, I think that was the actual thing that impressed Cobain right out the gate. Besides the fact that I'm sure Kurt too loved the Germs, like we all did.
Yeah, that to me is got to be one of the great unifiers. Is like people just heard the Germs, and I think that's to this day. Like they're just one of those bands that when you hear it, just like, oh, this makes sense. This is unlike anything I've ever heard before.
there's still no record like GI. There's no record like it. No record sounds like it. No record's written like it. No record is played like it. It still sounds fresh 45 years later. Music still hasn't caught up to it. So
When I was a kid, Pat's father-in-law painted my house.
that's incredibly random.
Yeah, Pat's father-in-law played in a punk band from here called the Battered Wives, and
Wow.
they were friends with my dad, and so he painted
I,
my house.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
didn't even know about Pat's father-in-law. What was his name?
Oh man, I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm blanking on it right now, but
That's okay.
Hey, one other great germs related thing, Damian, that you did was the setting up the little interview or the discussion with Don Bowles and the late great Steve Albini at the Waffle House in Hollywood. That was some great documentary magic right there. Thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate that, but that was actually the rest of the crew on that thing who were like, "Hey, we want to do a thing with Steve Albini, but he hates LA and says the only thing he likes from Los Angeles are the germs and the Waffle House." And so we're like, "Oh, let's see if he can go there." And they got Don Bowles to come down, and it was to this day one of the greatest breakfasts I've ever had. Like,
Wait a minute. There are no Waffle Houses in LA. What are
not
you
Waffle
talking
House, sorry.
I meant
Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
Roscoe's
about?
Blasphemy.
Roscoe's Chicken.
Blasphemy.
fucking
I'm sorry.
Dude, what the hell is wrong with you,
I'm
Schwartz?
tired, dude. This is a long day.
It's okay.
I mean, I love Waffle House. I know that because I toured.
No,
that's
no.
because I got out of LA.
yeah,
And when I came
Roscoe's.
back to LA, there was no Waffle Houses, and I was sad. I had to go to Denny's.
I like Waffle House too, but I think Roscoe's is the
Oh,
superior.
Roscoe's is actually
yeah.
really good.
No
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was it was funny because Don showed up and he really wanted to let Steve know that they had interacted before and it didn't go well with when they tried to do that Celebrity Skin record with him, and Steve wrote "fuck you" on the album and sent it back snapped into pieces. And so, but like Steve had
Wow.
completely forgotten about it.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It was incredible. Like but that was like Steve had forgotten about a lot of things leading up to that. Like he came up to me and I'm like, "Hey man, it's great to meet you again." And he's like, "Yeah, you came by my studio and I played you the unreleased mixes of Process of Elimination." And I'm like, "Nope, that wasn't me. That was the drummer from my band. I met you at All Tomorrow's Parties and when you were doing the poker game." And he's like, "No, pretty sure you came to my studio." And I'm like, "Believe me, do not question me on this one, my friend." But yeah, it led up to that payoff at the end.
I was there too at the ATP poker game. I was there.
That was an incredible.
Upstate New York at Kushner's.
Yes, yeah, and not a great dude, but I remember being there, and at some point, I'm talking to someone, and someone comes up and says, "Hey, can I get a photo with you and Ron Jeremy and me?" And I'm like, "What?" And then look over, there's Ron Jeremy. Like, I'm like, "Well, this is the weirdest party I've ever been to."
I've been in the supermarket shopping and turned around and Ron Jeremy's, putting stuff in his cart at Ralph's. That's just living in LA.
That's
mean,
LA.
Shit like that happens all the time.
Not to us farm boys in Toronto. Like for us, that's like, holy shit, fame. Like this is big lights, big city type shit. I've got so many questions that I want to punish you guys with.
Sure.
And I feel like I got to ask some of these before I go. Okay, so there's the unreleased bonus film for 1991, the year punk broke. This is known as a Blue Scale that
Yes.
came out. I love that bonus film in it.
Me too.
Good.
There's like, how much of that was that edited more recently than 1991? Like, or was that edited at the time?
That was not edited at the time. That was edited at God, what year was that?
2000, I think. What?
It was the early 2000s. I knew eventually the film was going to get a DVD release. I was sick and tired of getting emails from people going, "Is there any extra footage that you shot that's not in the movie?" So what I did was I went back to all the rough footage, found all the best stuff that was not used in the film, and cobbled this film together. And I was really surprised. I remember at the time, I think it was the DVD came out in 2011, so this must have been about 2008 or nine that I did that work and edited that film. And of course, at that point in time, we had the benefit of time to look at. When I made the film, the original film, uh, it was made, it was cut together throughout in 1992 and came out at the very end of 1992. But when I was editing that film at that time, it was in the height of Nirvana mania. Nirvana had just blew up and broke out and actually helped make the film's release possible. I don't think we would have had a theatrical release of that film had it not been for the success of Nirvana. In fact, I know we wouldn't have had that. So at any rate, there was 9 hours of material that I shot total. So a pretty finite amount of material that I shot during that tour in 1991, summer tour in Europe. So, I had already cut together a 99, 100-minute movie out of it. I'm like, there can't be much left. And I was just surprised at how much was left. And I was surprised that I was actually able to get 42 minutes of stuff that to me is as good as what was released as that film.
Yeah, I like the bit where Thurston's goofing on alternate band names for Sonic Youth or whatever, including Spuds Christ and Fart Patrol. Yeah, too funny.
Or the montage of people bummed out that Courtney Love's coming.
Yeah, I mean there was some really great stuff there that I would, but I mean so much of editing, it's really about where you're at that point in time, and of course having the benefit of time to put something together as an afterthought is a totally different approach. And I was just amazed that, I mean, the way that film was shot, there was no film crew. There was just me and a Super 8 camera. And, I had to edit the film together in a way that it made it appear that there were other camera angles, but that was me editing in a part of the song that wasn't live, or faking it from a different show, or just trying to make it work with what limited source that I had. And for me, that was what that film was. So, I didn't, in hindsight, had we all known what was going to come out of that time period, I could have had a second cameraman or two or three, that would have been definitely great. But, we made that film on a shoestring budget, a few $1,000s to get the film together and processed and telecinied. And, it was, that film too was a labor of love. And again,
Do you think it was inevitable what happened, or do you think Nirvana caused something? Because like I watched that movie and it feels like something's about to happen. Like you look at those crowds, and if it's not Nirvana, it's going to be something that's going to be the tipping point.
there was an energy going on there that was unlike anything, and something was going on, but we didn't really know what it was. I mean, I think a lot of it was the summer festival circuit over in Europe, and Sonic Youth had already been there and done that and had success there. And also Nirvana is, they have Nevermind recorded. It's in the can. It's about to come out. There's excitement there. And Nirvana are so happy and honored to be there with Sonic Youth, who they loved. And they're playing these shows with on this 2-week tour that felt more like summer camp than a rock concert or tour. It was just an incredible time, and I mean the smiles that we see on Cobain's face in the film are real, and the happiness and the joy that is there is entirely what the experience was like, and it was just a lot of fun, and a lot of fun making the movie too. And it was a thrill for me too to be there. And I don't think I would have been there. I don't think I would have been invited by the band, specifically Thurston, had he not been such a supporter of me and my films and my work and the stuff that I had done in the past. And he was a huge fan of my 1982 film, The Slog Movie, and of course the Love Dolls films, and my unreleased Black Flag tour film, which I showed to him at the beginning of '91. And he saw that and he said, "This is so great. I want you to make a documentary like this for Sonic Youth." And then 6 months later, I get the phone call from Thurston, do you want to come along on this tour with us? And had it not been for that still officially unreleased Black Flag tour film that I did called Reality 86, there would have been no 1991, the year punk broke.
And you finished Reality 86 in 91, right? Or at least that's what it
Beginning
says.
like January or February of '91. I finally had access to an edit bay, and I went in and finally edited the footage that I had sitting around for what at that point would have been 5 years, right? 4 years, 5 years, and I cut that hour-long film together. And like I said, had I not done that and shown it to Thurston, there would have been no 1991, the year punk broke.
Was there plans to release it? Like, was it supposed to come out at some point?
I was trying to get it released, and it just didn't happen.
He also showed it to the guitar player, and he kind of steamed out of the room.
Well, what happened is that at that time, you got to remember, in '91, Henry Rollins gets a major label record deal. Greg Ginn is pretty bitter about that. So Greg Ginn's ego gets in the way of the release of the film because he's just like, he saw it as something that would promote Henry Rollins. That's my take on it. And I think it's
yeah.
fairly
I just thought he just didn't want to see it. He didn't want to deal like it's the reality that he didn't want to see it.
Well, when he broke Black Flag up in '86, he was done with it. But to me, the weird thing about Greg is I know for a fact that Black Flag was broken up in his head long before that 6-month U.S. tour started. And, I know that because at the time, that's when I was close to him, and he was recording my band and producing my band and bringing my band in onto the label Painted Willie, which was just an unbelievable occurrence to me to happen in my life at that time, being such a huge fan and so, grew up with Black Flag and all of that. And then I just know from the time that I spent with him that he was already over it. So, but everyone knew I was making this film, and everyone knew I was shooting it, and it just took a while for me to get it together on the post end of it. And but still, I like to say that had I not done that, we wouldn't have had Year Punk Broke. So,
yeah, and like there's hopefully one day that thing sees the light of day, because that's got to be like you've got the first Rollins Black Flag performance in Slog, and then you've got
that's right.
The
last
Rollins performance.
The first and the last.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
And there's just so much amazing stuff in Reality 86 too. Yeah.
I've still never seen it. Like, it never showed up on my bootleg radar.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
It's been posted many times and brought
Your
down
your,
many times, but
your
I
Google
believe
foo is
it's
weak, grasshopper.
I believe it's still around. I mean, I know lots of people have posted it on YouTube.
Yep.
I gotta check. I'm gonna do some sleuthing later on. I didn't realize that you had posted Slog until today. Like I had only seen that years and years ago, and sort of be able to rewatch that today, I was like, oh my gosh, it's been a long time since I've seen it, and I totally forgot that that incredible Red Cross footage is from there. Like that
Yeah,
the iconic Red Cross
we
footage.
see that now, with brand new 4K scans in the Red Cross documentary that has been released last year. And
And the
actually,
themes.
I got a 4K scan done of the entire Slog movie, and it looks incredible.
Oh, I gotta watch that one day.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that's
it looks incredible.
what was it like, Jordan, when you were working at SST booking these bands at this
Well,
point?
yeah, I was working at Global Network Booking Agency, which, Chuck Dukowski, right, the bass player and one of the founders of Black Flag, but then who ended up getting kicked out of Black Flag, which was a mind blower for us. Anyway, you could call the SST office and chat on the phone, and a lot of times Chuck would pick up and we were talking about stuff. So eventually he invites me down. He's like, "Hey, we got a bus." So in that time there was Global Network Booking Agency, and the Black Flag practice pad was on Artesia Boulevard in Redondo Beach. He says, "We have a bus parked out back," because I guess I mentioned I had my parents needed me to leave the house or whatever. Time to leave the nest. So like, here, you can work as a press agent. We'll give you a tour press agent, $10 a day. You can sleep in the bus. I'm like, okay, I'm in. So eventually, I'm in. There's two desks, and there are two desks in the second floor. Down below is the practice pad. Chuck and I are on the phone all day. So I'm advancing Husker Du, Meat Puppets, Minutemen tours for tour press, and Chuck's booking gigs. He's booking, the Black Flag Loose Nut tour, and a couple of other things. And I'm listening to him booking these gigs, and we're chatting about stuff or whatever. Then eventually, he on the Loose Nut tour, there's a leg of it where Swab plays his band, so he's gone, and the phone's still ringing. So now I'm picking it up, and talking about deals on gigs and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, good. I think that sounds reasonable. Let's do that. So when he got back, I got promoted as a booking agency. As a booking agent, booking tours. So started out with Raw Zebra, which was a band that Janet Housden was in, and then just picked up some of the other SST bands or whatever. And, I booked tours with Dave's band, Painted Willie, DC3, Das Damen, and then one day I'm with Chuck. We were roommates, and we're riding into the office, and he's playing this tape, and I'm like, "What the hell's that?" And it was Dinosaur Jr. Living All Over Me. I'm like, "Please, Chuck, let me book this tour." And so like I'm trying to book the tour, whatever, and it's all kind of set, and then we find out the release of the records gets delayed, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And it just died, and I'm like begging promoters to do these gigs, and they're like, I don't know, like listen to goddamn records. So anyway, but it was amazing. It was amazing times, and then when Peter Willie got signed to SST, and then going on doing the flag tour, and it was an amazing time. My only regret is that I didn't shoot photos. Because before I would shoot photos for We Got Power magazine, I didn't. I shot a couple of rolls, and that kind of ends up in the We Got Power book, which we need to cover. But yeah, it was amazing.
It's crazy when you think about the roster SST had. Like
Yep.
it's
Sonic
like
Youth,
everyone. Yeah, like it
Meat Puppets.
Soundgarden. Like
Yeah,
there's
well, the thing about for me, Soundgarden, we were kind of seeing all the stuff happening in Seattle, like the booking agency side. And the Soundgarden thing happens, and they do this gig at the Anti Club, and I'm like watching, and I like them later. They're a great band, but I'm like, oh wow, SST's first band that does Led Zeppelin covers, fantastic. That was that was my impression of that.
that's like a lot of people's critique of a lot of that Seattle stuff, including Nirvana. Like I've heard people like, I think Nate from the Foo Fighters when he was on the podcast, talked about seeing Nirvana and just being like, I just thought they sounded like Led Zeppelin.
Well, I thought Kurt described it as they were something like, what was it, the Knack getting molested by Black Flag. It's like, oh, that's cool. I could dig that.
Bay City Rollers. It was the Bay City Rollers, which
I heard the Knack.
I thought it was
that's good
Black
too.
Flag and Black Sabbath covering the Bay City Rollers.
Well, I mean, once Grohl joined Nirvana, there was definitely a Bonham-esque element that came into the band because he was just the powerhouse drummer. That you listen to early Nirvana recordings, the earlier drummers were cool but different. But like Grohl really set Nevermind up. IMHO.
But Nirvana wasn't that pretentious, and there's no Stairway or any. I never picked up a Zepp vibe from Nirvana. But
when I first saw Nirvana, I was just like, I got it right away. To me, it was like the same music that we all grew up on, right? It was just like, Black Flag, Butthole Surfers, 80s underground American rock, fused with, Zeppelin and Aerosmith or Aero Zeppelin, or whatever. Like, I mean, Red Cross really was a band that was hugely influential on that Seattle scene and got everybody to go back to listening to the records that they got rid of years ago, whether it was Kiss or whatnot. But like, Red Cross were hugely. I mean, you talk to Mark Arm or King Buzzo, and they'll tell you Red Cross really kind of set that scene up too. So when you look at it that way, there's all this cross-pollination, interrelated stuff going on musically that formed this, and it just wasn't Nirvana. Just wasn't Led Zeppelin. It was like punk rock through a Zeppelin drum beat. I mean, when I first saw Kurt on that, I'd seen Nirvana play. The first time I saw him was with Dale Crover on drums, who now plays drums with Red Cross, in addition to Steve McDonald being in the Melvins. Again, all these interrelations that would go on for years to come. But on the 91 tour, once Grohl was in the band, the first thing I noticed was Kurt had a sticker on his guitar that said, vandalism. It's as beautiful as a cop.
As a rock in a cop's face.
A rock in a cop's face.
From the Feeders.
From the Feeders. And I got that right away. And I just knew Kurt was a punker. And like, we talked about Devo all the time. Like, we both loved Devo so much. So I remember how I bonded with Kurt at that time. And so it just wasn't a straight 70s rock influence. It was all this stuff.
Oh yeah, like for me, and actually like as a kid, I didn't really get it till I saw 1991, the year punk broke, and that's when I fell in love with Nirvana. Like I think prior to that, I didn't understand that there was I just didn't get it. I thought it was more of a metal thing to my kind of uneducated ear as a little kid. And then seeing the movie, I'm like, oh, these guys, they're on like another level. They're funny. They're self-aware. Like, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that film is it captures them before, pre-fame, and when they were their last moments of freedom, where, I think they were all quite proud of what they had done with the recording of Nevermind. And I think there was a confidence level that was there that maybe had not existed before. And it was just the perfect time to document a band. And, how lucky was it that I got to do that? I'm incredibly lucky and thrilling and magical time.
Yeah, it's interesting now having, like, obviously not Kurt, but like most of the people I've kind of gotten to meet over the years, and just like to see these sort of characters that I saw like I watched that movie so many times, and then to meet these people and get to know them and see them as three-dimensional people, and then going back now and revisiting it and watching them as these younger people, like, doing dialogue based on the Madonna Truth or Dare documentary, or it's just there's a lot of like their personalities that is captured in that movie. Especially Jay. Like, I think Jay is one of those people that no one realizes how funny he is. But when you watch that movie, like, you see that this guy's a funny fucking dude.
Yeah.
A few words.
A few words. But when he picks his spots, the words that he picks are always very funny and well placed.
They were on fire, too, on that tour. Well, there's only really a couple of shows that Dino played on that. And, wow, yeah. Jay. So much great stuff was intersecting there. It just was a time.
Well, there's that part where you're going record shopping, or maybe it's actually not when the punk rock record shopping thing is, but there's Thurston flips by Poison Idea, Kings of Punk album, and that, like, years later getting into that band, being like, oh my god, this is the record from the movie, I could have known about this thing years ago.
And that was just a random shot that I shot at one of the festivals, and there was a vendor that was just set up selling records, and I just was freeform running around with my Super 8 camera suit and stuff, and yeah, I know that shot.
It's funny because the Motley Crue thing comes up a lot because they covered, I guess, Anarchy in the UK, right? And that's where you got the name.
That's where the whole thrust of the movie came from. It was the first day of that tour, happening to catch Motley Crue on European MTV performing Anarchy in the UK, and me saying as a joke, 1991. The year punk rock broke, and that was just something I said offhand that Lee Ronaldo had heard and had repeated, and then Kim Gordon started saying it, and then Thurston started saying it, and then we started writing it on blackboards and backstage rooms. It was just an inside joke that grew throughout that 2 weeks of the tour, and by the end of the tour, it was clearly going to be the title of the film. Going into it, our working title was Tooth or Hair, which was a takeoff of Truth or Dare, where we planned to do more recreations of scenes from Madonna's film that came out that year. And of course, Sonic Youth and their obsession with Madonna going back several years prior to all this. So that was quickly superseded by the year punk broke. And it was in reference to Motley Crue, not Nirvana. And so many people think that it was like a serious statement of me saying that, but it worked out really well that way. But it wasn't like a serious, conscious statement on my part. It was an offhand joke that became an inside joke amongst everyone on the tour.
But I think it works on all three of those bands, right?
It does. That's the thing about it. I mean, it does. And I guess, art is up for interpretation. Different people are going to see what they see, or whatever it is they get out of it. They'll see it in that way.
Well, yeah, because like now, years later, knowing that Madonna played in punk bands early on,
right,
and that Motley Crue had members of the Pre-Screamers band and members of the Wigglers in it. So there's like, Motley Crue's a punk band, obviously going a little bit in a different direction than Nirvana's going at that point. But I feel like all three of these people are outgrowths of punk rock in some way. All three of these groups, I should say.
Well, unfortunately, Nirvana killed off that Motley Crue hair metal fucking scene. Thank God. Can't thank them enough.
It never really died, though, right? It just became emo, mall emo. Like it just metamorphosized itself into something else, hair obsessed.
Yeah, but as long as it's not Crew and Poison and Dawkins and Striper and Faster Pussycat, I'm good.
I think it's crazy that the Screamers, El Duce, Bill Rieflin, and Nikki Sixx all were in the same band.
Right.
Like that's crazy.
Again in Seattle, right?
In Seattle,
so, like,
yeah,
that's Seattle like way before.
yeah.
Right.
But that's still like it's so cool that like you can connect everything interesting that happens in music somehow back to this little scene.
It's very true with Bill Bartell as well, bringing it full circle. Um, I don't know if the website is still around, but there was a website that Bill was obsessed with called Band to Band, which is family trees of band members and like every band, their members, what bands they went to be on, et cetera, and showing the interrelations of so much crazy stuff throughout time. But I remember Bill was really obsessed with that site, and so yeah, it's a lot of it is like the fact that there is so much interrelated activity that is not even really well known. You know,
Well, it's funny you say that. Like the day after watching the documentary, I was listening to the Billy Idol audiobook, and I get to the part where he talks about how he wound up
Mm.
with Kiss's manager,
right,
and he's like, "Yeah, it happened because of this, this, and this." I'm like, "Oh, he has no idea that it's actually because of Bill." Like the reason he
right.
wound up with that Kiss's management is because of Bill Bartell. It has nothing to do with this weird story that he says in the book.
Well, he didn't know,
Yeah.
and Derwin Andrews, who's in the film, didn't know and figured it out after meeting Bill.
Oh, that's
And again, Bill's ability to get in there, side up to people, whisper in their ears, influence them, you know. And the reason why Bill was so obsessed with getting Bill a coin, his got because Bill Bartell was obsessed with Bill a coin, like as much as he was with the band, which is pretty weird, but like, you know, whispering in his ear, going, "You got to go check out Generation X. You got to go see this band." And Bill Coyne never would have heard of Generation X had it not been for that, you know. And of course, he follows Bill's lead, goes to England, tracks down Generation X, signs them up, manages them. Before long, the band breaks up, and of course, Bill LaCoin focuses on Billy Idol and sets him up with his career. So yeah, again, the long arm of Bill Bartell and his influence that people don't even know about. You know, again, I tried to shine a light on with this film,
yeah. People
and that's
throw
just one of hundreds of stories like it.
Yeah, yeah. People throw around the word Machiavellian, and he is truly a Machiavellian person who's like so much stuff. Like it's said in the film multiple times. Like so many things that you don't even realize are connected to this guy.
Right.
One on the I think Sinfort 34 is on the Mystic Sampler Volume 1, which also features Even Worse, which is Thurston Moore's band, right?
Think you may be right.
When did you first
um,
meet him in Sonic Youth?
uh, I first met. Funny enough, I was at the Gila Monster Jamboree show in the Mojave Desert in 1985, where Meat Puppets, Red Cross, and Sonic Youth played, and Psycom, Perry Farrell's first band, Psycom, documented in Stuart Sweezy's film Desolation Center. Really great film. If you're looking for a good rock doc to watch, I recommend it. At any rate, at that show, I had eaten a bunch of acid, and I was the only person in Sonic Youth that I remember talking to, that I did talk to that night, was their then drummer Bob Burt. I didn't even talk to Thurston or Kim or Lee that night. But a few months later, they came back to LA and they played a gig at the Anti Club, and I went that night, and I believe that night was the first time that I actually connected with Thurston and struck up a friendship that went on for years. And
But
Thurston, of course, was such a fan of hardcore, and he was so. He knew everything about all of my bands and all of my films and my fanzine and the We Got Power Party Go Home record, and he was like being a fanboy to me at the time about all that, and I was just like, what is this guy from New York City? This older guy. I mean, he was older to me at the time, a few years older, but like, what is this guy from this New York City art band? Why is he so into all this stuff? But then I, of course, soon learned more about Thurston, and I mean, like, Thurston was equally informed by that as he was by anything else. So,
and the other bit was Thurston went to the Desperate Teenage Love Dolls benefit at the Cathay de Grand.
He was there. He was at that.
Which was a couple of years before the Gila Monster Jamboree.
Yeah, he talks about that in the Bill film, but he didn't introduce himself to me that night, and I didn't know who he was, or I didn't even know of Sonic Youth's existence at that point. And that was like, what, Sonic Youth year one? That was like, what, 82, 83? Like, early, or Sonic Youth would have been going, but, they had not done any shows on the West Coast, and they wouldn't do a show on the West Coast until 1985, a few years later. So, but
it's interesting because I was watching that Stephen McDonald bass thing again today, and Thurston name drops Born Against.
Of course,
in it,
Thurston knows every obscure Southern California hardcore 7-inch that was ever produced because he has it in his collection, and he's going to go there. And he's going to do this. At first, I thought he was just doing it to amuse me, but that was just part of his lexicon, part of the stuff that he was really into, and he knew all about it.
And Jordan, did you manage Linkin Park?
No.
Okay, that's on your
rumor, though.
That's on your Discogs. So.
What?
Yeah, one of your credits on Discogs is that you're listed as one of the managers of Linkin Park.
Dude, I don't even hang out in Linkin Park.
If that were true, I was going to be like, holy shit, we're connected because the former guitar player of our band was managed by Linkin Park.
Yeah, no, I never.
Jordan, you're forgetting one thing. Kim Pilkington used to work at.
Yeah, that's right. So,
and we used to hang out with Kim when she worked the tennis courts there.
That's true.
So you can't believe everything you read on the internet.
No, there's
lots of wrong information on Wikipedia, on Discogs, on whatnot. I see erroneous info all the time.
I was hoping that there was an SST Linkin Park connection. That was just my fantasy playing.
Sorry, dude. You're good at Lincoln. You're good at linking things up, but that Lincoln Schwartz Park ain't gonna happen.
I think you're cooler for not having that connection with Linkin Park. I'm gonna be honest with you, Jordan.
Lincoln profile.
Yeah. But by the way, so when I left SST or Global Network in '89, I was negatively retained by Greg Ginn for lack of attention to detail or something like that. I see it more of just failure to make the impossible happen. Booking some of those tours were pretty tough. But anyway, after that, I went on to work with computers connected to the internet, and even kind of stopped going to gigs for a little while, until coming back later, just doing photography, shooting pictures at gigs. And then David and I got back together and collaborated with Ian Christie at Bazillion Points to do the We Got Power book. So, but I kind of, after leaving Global, took a step back from entertainment industry. Didn't try to book any band or manage a band like that for sure.
During hardcore, the entertainment industry would have been the last phrase we would have used to describe what we were doing, by the way.
But I mean, I was just like, no.
But you know what? It exactly it's what it was. The
Well,
truth
no,
is,
and that's the thing about,
now it can be told.
yeah. Well, but
Hardcore punk was the entertainment industry.
yeah. Well, and in global, Chuck had, you know, he had worked straight gigs and stuff, and I actually learned how to kind of work at a big company or something like that from Chuck. So, you know, in the SST was an offset of the entertainment industry or a segment of the entertainment industry. That's just why I said that. I mean, I didn't, you know, I work with computers connected to the internet. Of course, being in tech is somewhat of embarrassment in, at least in this country's government, whatever. So.
It feels like SST like was just maybe like 5 to 10 years too early. Like if it had been around in the '90s doing what you guys were doing, that's like kind of the model that I think a lot of labels went towards at a certain point. It just feels like it just like 1991 wasn't just the year that punk broke. It's like the year that broke SST, where there's just like the '90s were not kind to that label.
Well, they collapsed under their own weight. A lot of their artists started getting signed by major labels because that's what had to happen. And SST was not able to get these records into stores in the way that they should have. But forever, I mean, also I think there was a certain point in time where the label just lost its focus. It just became something else, and it never got back that vibe. When you go back to the early days of SST, when it was a much smaller community and a much smaller stable of bands, we knew what it was. They knew what it was. There was a cohesiveness. It was forging music forward at that time, and eventually, when the times caught up to it, it just made, I don't know, you would think it would have helped, but it didn't work out that way at all. It was like the beginning of the end. And also, I think Greg Ginn just took on way more than he could handle, signing every band at a certain point, putting out too many records. I think you look at the records that were released in the first 5 years of the label, and then you look at like when they hit that point in, what was it, the 89, 90, 91, they're releasing 100 records a year, like something that no label could do, with the resources they had. They kind of did too much too soon, to paraphrase the New York Dolls. And there was no real focus to it at all at that point. Just signed too many artists, try to do too many things, and it just kind of imploded.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like if if they had that, I guess one breakthrough artist, but then again, like, would it still have imploded?
Yeah, well, he turned down Nirvana, so there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Nirvana, yeah, Nevermind could have been on SST or Bleach.
I think Beggars did too, or maybe that was like they turned down doing the vinyl for In Utero or something.
You know,
But no accounting for taste.
It's it's quite a web.
Well, this has been quite a web that we have weaved tonight, and
Yes.
anytime you guys want to come back on this show, because there's a lot more I could be punishing you about, but I got to get up early and make lunches for the kids tomorrow. So
Sure. No, this has gone on for quite some time.
you are both
Yeah.
welcome to come back whenever you want.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, you got to get my
duly noted.
sister. You got to get my sister on here, Dave and Jennifer. That would be a good one.
That'll be the part two.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's good to have something new to talk about and to promote and to,
Yep.
build a legacy of, because um,
Right. Once you get that distribution deal for Secret Lives of Bill Bartell, then we can chat about how it's hitting people in the theaters.
Well, I think that's
eh,
when people start seeing this thing and word starts spreading, I feel like a lot more stories are going to come out. Maybe we're going to have to come back when you guys do the sequel.
You know, maybe I'll cut a bonus Bill film in the future.